call this meeting of the Sweetwater City Council to order this morning. Ask Lauren Rule with the Emmanuel Fellowship to give her invocation, and Councilman Castro will lead us in the pledges.
Would you join me in prayer? Dear gracious and heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and everything that you have in store for it. Father, in this season of Advent, as we await with great anticipation the celebration of your birth, and as we await with great anticipation your second arrival, I pray that we also await with great anticipation the opportunity to serve one another with compassion and love every day that you have us here, Father. God, I thank you for the men and women that lead this community, and I just pray your favor, your anointing on them. We invite your Holy Spirit to fill this place and lead us, guide us with all the many decisions that must be made. And Father, I pray that with each decision we make, it glorify you in every way. Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ. And it's in his mighty name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
We'll now move to item 4, which is discuss, consider, and act upon approval of minutes for meeting held on November the 12th, 2019.
Make a motion, we approve the minutes.
A second the motion. Approve the minutes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 5 calls for public input. Is there anyone who wishes to speak?
My name is Melody Hefner, and I own the block 41 of the Bradford Edition, and my 40 by 80 metal storage building is on the southeast corner where Texas Street dead ends. It's directly adjacent to the Mustang Heights Apartments. And as you can see in the pictures that I've left for everybody, the upper left-hand corner is showing a fence that they built across the waterway where the water flows downhill from Walmart parking lot and all those adjacent streets. Because it backs up the water so far, my shop, the entire building got 5 inches of water in it in May. Flooded everything, ruined a lot of furniture, walls, a lot of things that were inside. I asked them to clean it up. I've got nothing but static from them. They did clean some of the debris off the fence, but they still left some of the trees in there. I've been talking with Danny Heine with the city. I need to get that tree removed. It's right in the middle by the dead end sign. The picture directly below the dead end sign is how it looked before I rented a backhoe and hauled off 4 10 by 20 trailer loads full of debris and dirt and logs and cross ties, everything you can think of that had washed up against there, and cleaned that part of it up myself. The picture on the bottom left is the bridge that they built behind Mustang Heights Apartments, so they're totally aware of the creek that goes across there. It's 8 foot deep from the top of that bridge, and the picture on the bottom right is where the debris was backed up on top of that bridge. That's how fast and how deep the water goes and carries that debris through that creek area. And I've asked them to remove the fence. They said there's a HUD regulation that requires them to have a fence, but as you can see in the top picture on the right-hand side, there's a grassy area that they mow routinely. If they would just move that fence to their grassy area, they would still be in compliance with having the fence, but it wouldn't catch debris and obstruct the waterway. But they're not willing to remove it at my request or the city. They've already been told to move the fence, and the only thing they did was put the gate back up. And I'm dreading the next rain because it's going to happen again. And if you can help, I would greatly appreciate it. I did talk to Mr. Sheridan, and he is going to try to do something to help me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anyone else? now move to item 6A, which is to hear a presentation from Mr. Diller with EHT regarding proposed water and sewer system improvements.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Council. Good to see everybody. Have a couple items here to run through as far as the water and wastewater improvements that have been identified for the city. There we go. Okay, if you will recall, back during the budget retreat, we covered a few items that have been discovered with staff on improvements that were needed in the water and the wastewater side of the system. We worked through the estimated cost and what it would take to develop that project or those two projects. We also discussed potential funding sources. One identified was the Texas Water Development Board and their Drinking Water State Revolving Fund and the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, DWSRF and CWSRF. On the water side, which is the DWSRF, items identified were the 2 remaining trains at the water treatment plant and the related testing, some additional water line replacement, repainting of a ground storage tank at the water treatment plant, and then pump motor electrical improvements at the booster pump stations. Total estimated project development costs, $3.2 million. Go back. Okay. All right, next one, wastewater side. Proposed improvements identified for the application at the wastewater treatment plant. And these were developed, there was a wastewater treatment plant evaluation that we performed a couple of years ago, going in and looking at some of the state of some of the equipment and working with staff and getting recommendations and things that either are troublesome or that are outdated. Here's kind of a list of those that are proposed for replacement or improvement. Influent transfer pumps and VFDs, piping on the SBR, mechanical screen equipment, the UV disinfection system, and diffuser replacement. Also, wastewater collection system items or areas that are needing of improvement would be the line there along Neff and Lewis Front and along Crane from 12th to 5th. Total estimated development cost, $2.5 million. So, the path forward, suggested path forward, the next couple of items on the agenda are resolutions for council consideration, which would give approval to submit an application for funding to the Water Development Board for financial assistance. If those resolutions are approved, then a pre-application conference will be scheduled with the Water Development Board for discussion, and then procurement of professional services for the financial advisor, bond counsel, engineering services. Once that is done, preparation and the submittal of the financial application would be completed and submitted for board consideration and approval. Once that is done, then the city would have the opportunity to move forward with loan closing, then on to plan development, bidding, and construction. So hopefully, if there are any questions, I can answer those at this time.
At this point, what's the lending environment like right now?
So you know, with all interest rates are low right now, and especially with the discount provided by the Water Development Board. We have seen some recent closings at 0.7, 0.65%, something like that, less than 1%. This is a great environment and opportunity at this point.
Very good. Thank you.
Andrew, would you like to add something to this?
Sage is not very far off. I think right now the water board rate they've got on their website is 0.29%. We've been running numbers at assuming 2%. If you all remember, this is a very lengthy process from the actions you're going to take today. The time we get to closing will probably be almost a year from now, depending on how quickly we can get the application submitted and the water board's board can approve this project and then move forward with the CO. Take a more conservative approach and said, let's assume 2%, but right now we'd be absolutely underneath 1%. cheapest money the city can possibly borrow, which is why, this is, I think, our third time going to the water board for utility system improvements.
Thanks, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we'll now move to item 6B, which is discuss, consider, and act upon approval of a resolution of filing of an application for financial assistance from Texas Water Development Board for the water system improvements and make certain findings in connection therewith. Does the council have any questions?
Mr. Campbell, the age on our wastewater treatment plant,
Bought it online in 2002, so
okay,
it's 17 years old.
going on 18, and we've had no major improvements on it, just regular, just maintenance is all we've done up to this point?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Move adoption of the resolution.
It has to be read.
Okay, thank you. I move to adopt a resolution requesting financial assistance from the Texas Water Development Board for water system improvements and approving all other matters pertaining to, and I thank the mayor for his help.
Thanks, sir. You got a second, Daniel?
Second.
All in favor? Now read the resolution into the record. Resolution authorizing application for financial assistance from the Texas Water Development Board for water system improvements, expressing intent to reimburse costs of the water system project subject to the application and making certain findings to connection therewith. We'll now move to item 6C, which is discuss, consider, and act upon approval of resolution requesting financial assistance from the Texas Water Development Board for sewer system improvements and approving all other matters pertaining thereto.
That got the singer? Allow me to make a motion to adopt a resolution requesting financial assistance for Texas Water Development Board for sewer system improvements and approving all other matters pertaining thereto.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Now read the resolution into the record. Resolution authorizing application for financial assistance from the Texas Sewer Development Board for sewer system improvements, expressing intent to reimburse cost of the sewer system project subject to the application and making certain findings in connection therewith. Okay, we'll now move to item 6D, which is discuss, consider, and act upon approval of professional service agreement with Eurovista Versta North America, Inc. to provide inspection service on an as-needed basis. Morning, Dave.
Mayor, Council. The consideration that you have before you is for a professional services agreement, an on-call as-needed basis. So there's really no funding impact that this would put in place currently for the city of Sweetwater. What this does and how it really began was we've got a number of dilapidated structures in the community that we're working on processes to review and bring before you to make determinations on whether they're dilapidated or dangerous. So that's really what started this, to build some capacity for the city to do a little bit more adequate review of those structures. There is a property assessment portion of this service agreement where these folks, Bureau Veritas North, can go out there, do a property assessment, put together a report. That report then is part of the review of those structures for dilapidation or being dangerous. That report then is provided to the city council on your consideration whether you want to declare that structure as dilapidated. And then it's something that we would have that really was, I think, credentials-wise would give us a little bit more review on those structures moving forward. It would be for residential and commercial. It is short of a civil engineer review or a structural review where we might have to get that done for a commercial structure moving forward. But that is really how this started. In addition, if in fact we have staff that are off on vacation or sick and we just have no inspection services, this could provide that in a pinch also. So we don't anticipate that as a need at this present time, although in the future it could present itself, that we could use these services. And there's a whole litany of services. It could be for plans review, inspections, fire safety reviews, all of that would be included in here based on the rates that they provided if needed. Again, I want to state it's if needed. So it really builds capacity for us to do those reviews if we run into an issue with no staff, or that we just really have to get some structures reviewed so you can make a good call on declaring them dilapidated. So that's what this is for this morning, for your consideration.
I move we approve the professional services agreement with Bureau Veritas North America Incorporated to provide inspection services on an as-needed basis.
I'll second.
All in favor? Okay, we'll now move to item 6E, which is discuss, consider, and act upon approval of Sweetwater Enterprise for Economic Development Municipal Development District request to fund housing development infrastructure improvements over $15,000. Mr. Becker.
Thank you, Mayor and Councilman. Today we're talking about some improved infrastructure for the housing development that Gary McDowell started back in April. 3 houses have already been built. He has 2 more spec homes with plans to be built, also dealing with at least 1 custom-built home that will be looking to go out there. And as we've gone further into this project and the expansion of this project, we just found that the current water system that is there is not sufficient to be able to handle the future expansions. And then when that was being looked at, and of course Eddie Campbell and Sage both recommended this and support this, and we support their finding, that it also made sense to go ahead and add 3 fire hydrants that will actually be a safety issue out there. Plus, I think, if I'm not correct, when you have fire hydrants in that area, that also helps on the insurance ratings for the people in that area. So that we think this is just another way to expand that workforce housing that we think is going very well, and we want to make sure that there's no delays caused by any infrastructure issues. So our board approved the expenditure of $65,000 yesterday to do this improvements.
Make a motion, we approve the funding request.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Now move to item 6F, which is discuss, consider, and act on approval of funding assistance request from Sweetwater Enterprise for Economic Development, MDD, for demolition and removal of dilapidated residential structures.
I know this is later in your agenda, but this is just showing that our board of directors wants to assist in the demolition of dilapidated structures. We also support Dana and his team and all the positive things that they're doing in our community. And we know that we may not all agree with the timelines that happens, but when you have timelines that are legally put in there, we have to follow them. So we work very closely with Dana, and I know he'll be proposing, but based on the proposal we approved yesterday to spend $33,330 on the demolition of 5 properties that were recommended by Dana, should the city council approve that in your agenda.
We got a motion?
We need a, what do we,
We've got to approve his expenditure before we approve our expenditure, I think is what it amounts to, isn't it?
well, I move we approve y'all spending the money. I approve. I move we approve the MDD's expenditure of $33,330 for demolition and
Of
removal
5 structures.
of this 5 structures.
Got a second?
I second the motion.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank Sir.
Thank you very much. We think this is a great partnership, and again, I want to thank Dana and his department are doing a tremendous job of getting into something that hadn't been taken care of in a long time, and they're doing a really good job getting it caught up. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now move to item 6G, which is discuss, consider, and act upon approval of bid award for demolition and removal of dilapidated structures.
Great. I appreciate that. Again, this is, just to reiterate what Ken had said, this is a good partnership. I appreciate the fact that they're getting involved, and this is the beginning of, I think, will be some additional structures coming forward for your consideration, and as we build this program up to take care of some of these structures in the community. Just as a timeline, these structures were declared by the City Council on October 8th, actually, the ones that you're seeing here for dilapidated, which is a few months back now, so you can understand the timeline that it takes. And we're to the point where we've received bids, and we had received a number of bids, and I think you have sheets that reflect the 4 bids that we got. Pretty variable cost. The lowest and best bidder was Cole Construction at what Ken mentioned, the $33,330. And it is to remove the structures that you see before you. 406 Bowie, you've seen these before, but just to kind of give you an idea of what you're going to be asked to consider is that this structure certainly is in a dilapidated state as declared by the City Council. We have this one at 303 East Alabama Avenue. It is actually, if you get a close-up look, it's pretty dilapidated as well. And then I think this one actually had a fire on the inside. 206 West New Mexico Avenue, another trailer house that is in a dilapidated state, thoroughly reviewed and is part of this bid. I just have 2 more to show. This is a 2-story, 1208 Hickory Street. Again, clearly an attractive nuisance. And really what we're doing this for is public health and safety issues and to help clean up the neighborhoods. Last one is 1306 P Street. This was a fire. We've got a number of accessory buildings on this property too. It's in a fairly nice neighborhood, and this will then again beautify a little bit better that neighborhood and remove a blighting influence. And that's really what the idea is. So I just bring these back before you to kind of bring it back full circle. Now it's just awarding the bid to have them, to get Cole Construction moving on the demolition and removal of the structures. And at that point, I really don't have any more to add. And I thank you for your consideration.
I have a question. What kind of a timeline does the group that takes these down have?
We've given a 60-day timeline that they have to have removed. And the bid specs that were out there have to remove the structures. There may be some grading on the lots so they're mowable, because we'll probably end up mowing them. We would like to get them certainly back on the tax rolls. They have to cap the sewer line and do all that kind of thing, but we've given them 60 days. That's a typical amount of time. It may seem a little bit long, but you never know what you're going to run into weather-wise. So that's a pretty good bet that they'll have it done within the timeline.
Thank you.
We need a motion?
Yes, sir, and it has to be read according to the sheet. Up at the top.
I move that we approve bid awarded to the lowest bidder and best bidder and authorized contract signature by city manager. Is that?
That's it.
right?
Second.
All in favor? We now move to item 6H, which is discuss, consider, and act upon approval of purchase of a splash pad to be constructed with all materials and labor at Newman Park. Mr. Tapp.
Good morning, Tal Filligan with J. Martin. Very glad to be here to talk about splash pads this morning, and certainly appreciate the opportunity to help you guys with this project. So if you remember back in the spring, we talked a little bit about splash pads. This council approved this project moving forward. Originally, we met with the SEED MDD board. Those guys are the ones providing the funding for the project. They approved a resolution also back in the spring for an amount not to exceed $750,000 for this project. We've been working since that time to get this project to a point to go to construction, and that's where we're at today, is to ask for approval of two quotes that you have in your packet. They're buy board quotes, one from Vortex. They are the splash pad supplier and construction company, and then Playground Inc., which will be the supplier of the shade structure and seating associated with the splash pad. So back in the spring, we sent out, I believe, 6 RFPs to splash pad suppliers. We received 3 responses. We had formed a subcommittee made up of Russell Jones, Ken Becker, Misha Adams, and myself to evaluate those proposals and have a committee to work through this process, and we've been doing that. So Vortex was selected as the supplier, and that's the quote, again, that you have in your packet. Our timeline was one of 2. We had Plan A and Plan A2, I guess. So our hope was that we could deliver the splash pad, have it constructed and operational by the end of splash pad season 2019. Obviously, that did not happen. We knew if we ran into any small hurdles, given our start date, that just wasn't going to be possible. And we ran into a few hurdles. Over the last few months, we've been able to overcome those hurdles and get those behind us, and we're moving forward. We are on schedule, which was Plan A2, to have the splash pad constructed and operational for the season 2020, which would be mid to late spring. So there are a handful of cost items related to construction of splash pad. First and foremost is the splash pad itself, right? That's the biggest component. And you'll see in your packet that buy board quote for Vortex is approximately $650,000. Of course, our budget is $750,000. At this point, I'm pleased to let you know that we are within budget, and that's why we're at this point in the process and asking for your approval. Our focus all along with the budget that we had for this project was to really focus on the splash pad itself. We wanted to spend all of our dollars on that splash pad. It's very difficult, sometimes impossible, to add to a splash pad once it's constructed. So you really want to work to get the most bang for your buck on a project like this, because you're not going to really be able to come back and add to it easily. So the other elements, cost elements associated with this project are extension of some utilities. They are small extensions, both water, sewer, and electrical. The city, to help us stay within our budget, the city has agreed to make the water and sewer extensions. Again, they are short extensions and basically service lines to service this pad. We have water and sewer mains immediately adjacent to the site that we've chosen, and I'll talk a little bit about the site and the splash pad specifically in just a second. We also have and I mentioned the shade structures and seating. It's important anytime you build a splash pad project, you want to include ample shade for parents that are bringing their children there. They don't want to have to stand out in the sun while their kids play on the splash pad, and then provide seating. So I mentioned the quote, approximately $22,000. I think it's 21 and some change $1,000 for a very large shade structure with a number of benches and picnic tables under that shade structure. There's some additional concrete flat work connectivity that we're doing with this project, basically connecting the parking lot to the splash pad, and then some concrete flat work related to the shade structure and the seating that I mentioned earlier. Vortex, that is also in Vortex's quote. They're doing a big bunch of the concrete work already, and so they're going to include the little piece of sidewalk and some of that flat work as well. So that is within that quote. It's important immediately adjacent to splash pads to establish vegetation quickly, and the way that we typically do that is through sod and irrigation. And so we will have a landscape contractor that will receive bids from once we get this process going to complete that portion of the project. We will also receive bids for the electrical side. I mentioned the extension of utilities. There's electrical on site, but to connect the existing electrical service to the splash pad, that's not something Vortex does. We need a licensed electrician to do that. And so we'll be receiving bids for that component of the project. And then, of course, you guys approved our agreement to help with not only the engineering, but surveying, materials testing, inspection, and construction administration of this project, which we are doing. So right now, with all of those components, of course, the electrician and the landscape, we still have to receive bids on, but I have estimated those conservatively and feel quite confident that we're within budget. And we're right at our budget. We're $749,000 for the project. So let's talk a little bit about placement and what this pad's going to look like. On the screen, this is, in hindsight, I probably just should have put an aerial photograph on here, but what you've got is our site plan showing the splash pad. So the location, of course, is within Newman Park. And if you remember where the tank and the airplane and the helicopter, they were fenced off, where those are sitting, this is where that splash pad is going to be. It's right next to a playground area that is just immediately west of where the splash pad will be. So it's a little bit further. Can we go back to the right there? It's on the south end of that area, I guess to my right, on the right, bottom right of the screen. That's where the tank sits. So the splash pad is going to sit where the airplane and the helicopter used to sit. Okay, so let's talk about splash pad and what this thing's going to look like. Next slide. This is an aerial view of the splash pad. So splash pad's just over 5,000 square feet of concrete surface area. We've got a number of different features on this. When you put together a splash pad, it's important to try to hit all age groups, and I think we have with this pad. We had a number of meetings with our subcommittee that I mentioned before, and really poured over the options, because there's a whole bunch of options to these splash pads. We spent a lot of time evaluating which options we wanted, which would fit best for this community, and really feel like we've arrived at almost our wish list. When we sat down and put our wish list together, this is our wish list minus just a couple of items. So we feel like it's a really good pad. So in the top right-hand corner, the diamond shape, that's what's called a water journey. It is for the younger kids, toddlers, kids that are going to sit down and play in the water. They can redirect the water. I remember when I was little, I'd take my Hot Wheels and pour water and make little mud trails. It's that, except not quite as dirty, right? So they can run their Hot Wheels through it, divert the water and do different things. And then directly south or down from that is a little bit older age group. These are going to be cannons and what they call an orbit, fixtures that move. They're going to be squirting water, but they can squirt it at each other or squirt it across the pad. And so a little bit older kids are going to play in this area. And then the biggest feature is what is called an elevation. It's going to have two slides, a smaller slide for the younger kids, a bigger slide for the older kids, and then probably once this pad's built, you'll see what I'm talking about. But probably the most or the biggest feature is the dumping bucket. It's a bucket that just continually fills up with water. When it gets to a certain level, it dumps, and it dumps a big wave of water out. So you definitely get just as wet as you would as if you jumped in a swimming pool. So it's a neat feature. It's got a couple of different levels on this elevation. Kids can kind of climb like a jungle gym to some degree. And then a bunch of features on on the elevation itself, like water cannons and things where you can spin it and cause the water to kind of swirl out in the air. So this is the splash pad that you would be approving with the quote that was in your packet. I will remind you, this is a recirculation system. So while it is shooting water up in the air, these pads generally recapture about 85% of the water. So you're not just constantly running water on the pad and losing all of that water. It's about an 85% recapture. One element I'll mention, this drawing, we just recently got the revised quote because we were working very diligently to try to get this project within budget. We did have to remove one element from this pad to get us within our budget. You'll see right in the center there's a serpent that we had wanted on the pad. It was a serpent. It was the closest thing they had to a snake, right? So rattlesnake roundup, that was kind of a theme we were catching on to. Unfortunately, we had to pull that element out of the pad. But what we did is we're having Vortex install what's called a safe swap. So it's going to be a ground-mounted feature that'll still squirt water, but should someday you guys desire to spend a few more dollars on this pad, you pull the safe swap off and you can plug the serpent in and purchase that. So all of the equipment, the utility room pumps and everything are sized for that serpent in the future. So with that, we'll kind of scroll through some of the 3D renderings. I'm not sure if I can do that from here, but we've got about 4 or 5 slides here to show you what this thing's going to look like on the ground. It is, it has down at the bottom of the screen, right in the center, you see a kid next to a pole. That is an activator. So there's 2 activators, one on the top of the pad, one on the bottom in this view. One controls all the features except for the water journey. The other one controls the water journey. So this thing doesn't just run all day with nobody there. Kids have to be actively playing and hitting that button. And so it'll run. It's something that you can schedule how long it runs per activation, but it'll run for several minutes before another kid has to run over there and hit it again. These are great quality of life projects, have a very big impact. Vortex has so many options with what you can put out there that you know, it's really going to have a lot of curb appeal, and it's going to be nice. I think it's something that the community will be very proud of.
There's that bucket.
There's the bucket. And that does not do it justice. So last slide here is the shade structure. It's a cantilevered structure. I included this just to show you. I think it's about 24 feet by almost 30 feet. So it is a large structure and it's going to provide a great deal of shade. We've placed that shade structure, attached it to the splash pad itself, but we put it on the side closest to the playground. And so you can kind of have kids running back and forth between the playground, and they've got to stop and talk to mom or dad on their way. So, and with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
I move that we approve purchase of a splash pad to be constructed with all materials and labor at Newman Park contingent upon the Sweetwater Enterprise for Economic Development Municipal Development District approving their item during their Friday, December 13th, 2019 meeting.
Second that motion.
And I will make the comment that the seed board is in complete agreement. We're not able to take the formal step at our meeting yesterday.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried and approved. Okay, we'll now move to item 6I, which is discuss, consider, and act upon approval of reappointment of Miss Elsie Pierce and Miss Carol Kane, and appointment of Miss Candace Mercer to the County City Library Board with terms expiring on December 31st, 2020.
Make a motion, we reappoint Ms. Pierce and Ms. Mercer, Ms. Kane.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now move to item 6J, which is discuss, consider, and act upon approval of reappointment of Mr. Lloyd Harris as Civil Service Commissioner, term to begin January 1st, 2020, expire December 31st, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
City Manager's report.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. I got a couple of items here. One is related to SNAP and their second annual goodie bag campaign. If you can read that, I'm having a hard time. But the Christmas goodie bags, it's for local homebound seniors. It's a really good program that SNAP puts on, and everybody that works through SNAP. There are several items that are needed that are primarily shelf-stable items, such as soup, stews, and pasta, tuna, salmon, gelatin, pudding cups, Vienna sausages, crackers, such as toast and peanut butter, cookies, those types of things that are going to be shelf-stable for our seniors. We have a drop-off and pick-up donations deadline of December 13th, which is coming up here pretty quick. That's Friday the 13th, isn't it? Drop them off at the SNAP building at 1701 Elm, or if anybody needs assistance with getting that to SNAP, and we can call. If you call SNAP at 236-6345, we could schedule a pickup at your home and then get those delivered to the seniors that are needing it, especially during this holiday season. So we do appreciate anybody who's willing and able to participate in this great program. And if I understand it correctly, Tanya, we also accept cash or monetary donations as well, so that we can do the shopping. And so we use the cash for fresh fruit and things like that right before they're delivered, which is a good thing. So maybe Joseph, we can get some help from the newspaper to try to get this out. We have that out on social media. I think the CDMDD Ken and your group for putting that out there. The chambers put that out there as well. So hopefully the community can, like we always do, come together and do good for our most vulnerable citizens, especially, like I said, during this time. And then, more good news to report. Might need some batteries for Christmas, but fire department promotions. I'll turn this over to Chief Madden, and he will go through the process, and we'll introduce our newest promoted individuals in the fire department. Grant.
Thanks, sir. We had a retirement in August. It takes a little while to get things like this through civil service. You have to promote, you have to post the test and the reading list and everything so many days out. We did that. We gave the assistant chief promotional exam, which to qualify for assistant chief, you have to be a paramedic and you have to have been the immediate step below that, which is in our case lieutenant, for a number of years. Eric and Brad actually qualified for that and tied on score. This is how hard and competitive this test is. Eric is more senior and the points added on there. And Eric Reed is our new assistant chief. And then the lieutenant's test, since Eric was a lieutenant, we had an opening in the lieutenant position, so we gave the lieutenant test that afternoon, and Tad Baird passed the test with by far not by far, all of them passed, which is amazing. I really want y'all to know that we have a crack bunch of guys that studied their tails off, worked really, really hard to do this. This is not a chance that comes up very often in the fire department, but I'm very proud of all of them. All of them, the guys have really, I've been chief for 13 years and I've always wanted to not be the one that retires on duty, you know, and try and I think the guys here are a good step forward as far as where the department, you know, is headed to a great place. So Eric Reed, new assistant chief, Tad Baird, new lieutenant. Look forward to many great things from them in the future. And there you go. Anything, guys? Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, that's all I had.
Thank you, sir. I'll call for a motion for adjournment. You got one of
Motion
those?
we adjourn?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.